2,000 years ago, a man wrote to himself in a leather journal, alone in a tent on a battlefield, reminding himself how to stay calm while an empire crumbled around him. He was the most powerful man alive, and yet he spoke to himself like a student who still had everything to learn. What he wrote down that night still works today, in your inbox, in your traffic jam, in the argument you had this morning that you can't stop replaying. Stoicism was never about becoming cold or emotionless. It was about becoming unshakable. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to use it. In a world that never stops notifying you, never stops comparing you, never stops asking for your attention, the ancient Stoics offer something almost radical: silence, control, and clarity. This is not a history lesson. It is a toolkit, a working manual built from the letters of Seneca, the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, and the teachings of Epictetus, translated into language you can use the next time your boss emails you late at night, the next time your relationship feels uncertain, or the next time you simply cannot get out of bed. Stoicism has survived empires, plagues, revolutions, and now the algorithm. Let's find out why. Before we go further, if you find value in what you're about to hear, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps this philosophy reach more people who need it, and it costs you nothing but a second. Now, let's begin. And the first thing you need to understand about Stoicism is a single idea that changes everything once it actually sinks in. Some things are within your control. Everything else is not. Your thoughts, your judgments, your effort, your reactions, your values, these belong to you completely. Other people's opinions, the weather, the economy, how someone else treats you, whether your flight gets delayed, none of that is yours to command. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and later became one of the most respected teachers in Rome, built his entire philosophy on this single distinction. He said that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. A traffic jam is neutral. Your fury about the traffic jam is a choice you didn't realize you were making. Once you truly grasp this, you stop wasting your energy on things outside your control and you start pouring all of it into the one domain where you actually have power, which is your own mind. This sounds simple, almost too simple, but try applying it for a single day, and you'll notice how much of your stress is manufactured by fighting against things you cannot change. You get cut off in traffic and your blood boils, but the other driver's behavior was never yours to control. You send a text and don't get a reply for hours, and your mind spirals into stories about what it means, but their response time was never yours to control. A coworker gets the promotion you wanted, and you feel the sting of injustice, but their decision was never yours to control. What was always yours to control was your preparation, your effort, your attitude, and how you respond next. The Stoics weren't asking you to stop caring. They were asking you to stop wasting your one precious resource, your attention, on things that will never yield to your will. The second pillar of Stoic life is the practice of separating events from your interpretation of events. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled during wars, plagues, and constant political betrayal, wrote a private journal we now call Meditations, never intended for publication. In it, he reminds himself again and again that it is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about if someone insults you, the insult itself is just sound waves hitting your ear. Your ear. What actually disturbs you is the meaning you immediately assign to it. The moment you can pause between the event and your reaction, even for 2 or 3 seconds, you take back your power. About suppressing emotion. It is about inserting a sliver of space where your reasoning mind gets a vote before your impulsive mind hijacks the moment. Modern psychology calls this cognitive reappraisal. The Stoics were doing it in the 2nd century. A practical way to build this skill is what the Stoics called the view from above. When something feels overwhelming, imagine rising above the situation, above your house, above your city, above the country, until you can see the entire scene as a small dot in an enormous world. Suddenly, the email that ruined your morning looks tiny. The argument that kept you up all night looks tiny. This is not meant to make your problems feel unimportant to you personally, but to remind you that most of what consumes your mental energy will be forgotten within a week, and almost all of it will be forgotten within a year. Perspective is a muscle, and the Stoics trained it daily. The third principle, and one that modern life desperately needs, is the concept of negative visualization, which Seneca called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of adversity. This does not mean living in fear. It means occasionally imagining loss, failure, or hardship on purpose, so that when it eventually arrives, and it will, you are not caught completely unprepared. Seneca suggested that before a journey, you should mentally rehearse everything that could go wrong, not to ruin your trip in advance, but so that, if disaster does strike, part of your mind has already been there before. There is a strange side effect to this practice that most people don't expect. When you imagine losing what you have, even briefly, you appreciate it more right now. The house you live in, the health you currently enjoy, the people who are still in your life. These become vivid and precious again the instant you imagine them gone. Gratitude for the Stoics was not a soft or sentimental idea. It was a discipline built through deliberate practice, and negative visualization was one of their sharpest tools for building it. This connects directly to how the Stoics thought about death, which might sound morbid at first, but is actually one of the most life-affirming ideas in the entire philosophy. Marcus Aurelius kept a phrase close to him throughout his reign: memento mori. Remember that you will die, not as a source of dread, but as a source of clarity. If you knew with certainty that you had 1 year left, would you still spend 3 hours a day comparing your life to strangers on a screen? Would you still swallow your words instead of telling someone you love them? Would you still delay the work that actually matters to you in favor of work that simply fills the hours? Death for the Stoics was not the enemy of a good life. It was the deadline that gave a good life its urgency. Without an ending, nothing would ever need to be decided today. The awareness of mortality is what turns a vague intention into an actual choice made now. Let's talk about anger, because this is where Stoicism becomes brutally practical for daily life. Seneca wrote an entire book on the subject, and his central claim is startling. Anger, he argued, is temporary madness. It feels powerful in the moment, like righteous fire, but it consistently makes people say and do things they later regret, sometimes permanently damaging relationships or reputations over something that, in hindsight, mattered very little. The Stoic response to anger is not suppression, which tends to backfire and leak out sideways. It is delay. Seneca suggested that before reacting to anything that provokes you, you count, you breathe. You literally give your rational mind time to catch up with your emotional reaction. In our current era of instant replies, instant comments, instant outrage, this single habit, the pause before the reply, might be the most valuable Stoic tool you can install into your daily life. The next time someone sends a message that makes your chest tighten, close the app, wait an hour. You will almost always be relieved that you didn't send what you first typed. Another cornerstone of Stoic practice is the idea of living according to virtue rather than according to outcome. The 4 cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, were considered the only true measure of a good life. Not wealth, not fame, not comfort, not even health. because all of those things can be taken from you by forces outside your control. Virtue, however, cannot be taken. It lives entirely inside your choices. A wealthy man who cheats others is not living well by Stoic standards, no matter how large his house is. A poor man who acts with courage, fairness, and self-control is living an excellent life, regardless of his bank balance. This reframes the entire modern obsession with external validation. Followers, likes, promotions, square footage, none of these were ever the actual scoreboard. The scoreboard was always your own character, and it is the only scoreboard that travels with you into every circumstance life throws your way. This is where Stoicism becomes deeply relevant to burnout, anxiety, and the general exhaustion so many people feel today. Modern life constantly asks you to outsource your sense of worth to things you cannot fully control. An algorithm's mood, a manager's approval, a stranger's comment section. The Stoics offer an exit from that exhausting chase. When your sense of worth is rooted in your own effort and your own choices, rather than in outcomes decided by other people or by chance, you become remarkably resistant to the daily blows that used to wreck your entire week. This is not detachment from life. It is engagement with life on terms that can never be stolen from you. Let's bring this down to something you can actually do starting tonight. The first practice is the evening journal, exactly what Marcus Aurelius was doing in that tent. Each night, ask yourself 3 simple questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my own values? What will I do differently tomorrow? This is not about self-punishment. It is about honest, unemotional review, the same way an athlete reviews game footage. Over weeks and months, this single habit rewires how closely you pay attention to your own behavior, and awareness is always the first step toward change. The second practice is the morning pre-meditation. Before you check your phone, before the noise of the world reaches you, spend 2 minutes imagining what might go wrong today. A difficult conversation, a frustrating delay, an unexpected setback, and mentally rehearse responding to each one with patience rather than reaction. This is not pessimism. It is preparation. Soldiers rehearse, surgeons rehearse. Why should your emotional responses be the one area of your life left completely to chance? The third practice is the dichotomy of control checklist. When something upsets you today, and something will, pause and ask one question. Is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, release it, not because it doesn't matter, but because gripping tighter on something you cannot move only exhausts you without changing the outcome. The fourth practice is voluntary discomfort, something Seneca himself practiced regularly. He would occasionally eat the simplest food, wear the plainest clothes, and sleep on the hardest surface available, not because he needed to suffer, but to prove to himself that comfort was not the thing keeping him safe. When you occasionally choose difficulty on purpose, cold showers, a hard workout, a fast, a long walk without your phone, you build a kind of quiet confidence that says, I can handle discomfort, so discomfort no longer controls me through fear. What makes Stoicism different from so much of the self-help advice? Flooding your feed today is that it was never designed for comfort. It was designed for resilience. It does not promise you a life free from loss, rejection, failure, or grief, because no philosophy honestly could. What it promises instead is a stable center that holds steady no matter what storm is happening around you. Marcus Aurelius lost children. Seneca was exiled and later forced to end his own life by a paranoid emperor. Epictetus was enslaved and physically disabled by a cruel master. These were not men writing theoretical comfort from a place of ease. They built this philosophy, and that is exactly why it still holds up under the weight of modern life. Deadlines, breakups, financial stress, comparison culture, and the constant low hum of anxiety that so many people now consider normal. If any part of this resonated with you, this is exactly the moment to hit that subscribe button. Because this channel exists to keep bringing you philosophy that actually works under pressure, not just wisdom that sounds nice in a quote graphic. Drop a comment below and tell me which Stoic idea you're going to try first: the evening journal, the morning premeditation, the pause before reacting, or voluntary discomfort. I read every comment, and I want to know which one you're taking with you. Let's close with the words Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not to an audience, not for approval, but simply to remind himself of what mattered. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That single sentence, written in a tent nearly 2,000 years ago, is still one of the most useful things a human being can remember today. The world will keep sending you things you cannot control. Your job was never to control the world. Your job was only ever to master your response to it. That is the entire art of living, and now you have the tools to practice it. Gents, thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this video helped you see your own life a little more clearly, like it, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a calmer mind this week. See you in the next one.